Hello, this is Scarlet and Rage podcast. I am Michael, and Rage is with me today. We are going to discuss the topic, as you can see in the title, about Ohio State's new AD hire. And we're going to discuss a few other things as well. But before we get to that, if you would please like and subscribe. Thank you, all of you who have liked and subscribed as of late. We will be gearing up towards our off-season content. We'll try and begin to kind of give you some heads up of what that schedule is going to look like so you can tune in to those areas of interest and continue to like, subscribe, and pass this podcast along. Thank you so much, those of you that are passing it along. Some weeks, hundreds of you are sharing it with other people. So thank you so much for doing that. I just ask, if you find an episode you like, continue to do that. And thank you for your support. Rage. We can't get the badge up anymore. I don't know why the Rage name badge has disappeared, but we're going to try and figure that out. It's not one of our major concerns right now, but I want it back right across the bottom there, Rage.
I don't know what happened, Michael. It must have been something when we were playing around with our background filters or something. I'm assuming that has something to do with it. I guess you're going to have to get with Force of Light Entertainment and see what they have to say about it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So you have some strong thoughts on this AD hire.
I do. So everyone, like Michael said, I've seen that, we have a few hundred subscribers, but I see we have a couple thousand views. So you 1,000 or whatever so people that aren't subscribed, please do, because then you can hit the notification icon and you never miss a video on us. Now back to this subject. This is kind of an emergency podcast. We weren't actually planning this. I hit Michael up yesterday, but we decided to wait until after Ross Bjork's press conference ended today, and we have a new athletic director at Ohio State, and grand slam hire by the new president in Ohio State. Round of applause. I have preached for a long time that we need more of an SEC mentality when it comes to managing the sports world at Ohio State. And what better way than to do that by hiring a guy from the SEC that managed one of the richest athletic departments in the country. And let's not forget, he also had experience at Ole Miss because he was their athletic director from 2012 to 2019. And then he was from A&M from 2019 to 2023.
Do you know what's kind of strange, Jay, right off the bat about this hire, though?
Mm-hmm.
Is that he was caught up in a violation scandal at Ole Miss. And Houston Nutt kind of took the fall for that scandal. But it's just interesting to me that Ohio State would hire a guy that had been in a previous recruiting, or I don't know if it's recruiting, but some type of football violation scandal. And Ole Miss received a 2-year postseason ban. So I'm trying to put together, what does this mean? It clearly means that there's some kind of different thinking going on at Ohio State. Does it take Michigan winning a national championship to start thinking differently? Like all of the SEC national championships, nope, we're not going to change anything for that. But when Michigan wins a national championship, now they're like, oh, well, football violations, who cares? It's a new NCAA. Is that the kind of attitude we're getting here, you think?
You know what? You make a really good point there, because what is the thing that we said that we wanted all along? What did Michigan winning? What did it do for Ohio State?
Well, I mean, it gave it credibility, and it also gives it something to shoot for.
Yes, Ohio State now has something. They're looking at Michigan. They're like, wow, they're the flag bearer of our conference now.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't sit here and be lazy anymore. Ohio State's just been resting on their laurels, just being the best team in the Big Ten up until the last couple of years. And now Michigan wins a national championship, and Ohio State is forced to move out of their comfort zone. So what you're insinuating here is, I believe Ohio State, with their new president, which started 12 days ago, I guess, he understands like things need to change from the ground level up. Like they needed a complete restructuring of everything they did. And it looks like they're starting to do that, because I don't believe, unless we hired the right president, I don't believe Ross Bjork would have been the hire. I think they would have got the guy from Washington State, Pat Chun, or maybe the guy from UCLA, like
Yeah.
more like Gene Smith proteges.
Would you say that this is the more risky hire? Higher risk, higher reward?
No, I don't really see risk here. I
You
would
don't
say
think
it's
so?
all reward. I don't really see much of a risk here, because I believe Ohio State has such a structure in place. I don't think we're ever going to give a coach like such a huge contract like they gave Jimbo Fisher with such a massive buyout and
Mhm.
anything. And again, Ross Bjork did not hire Jimbo Fisher, but he did extend him. So what do we know about this guy personally? Well, first off, with Ross Bjork, I know that he loves sports and understands the state of Ohio. I know he's not from Ohio, but I listened to his press conference today. Apparently, his mom grew up outside of Findlay, Ohio. So that side of his family are all big Buckeye fans, and he immediately referred to Michigan as a team up north, and he gave an OHIO to the crowd that was watching and listening there. I don't know if you saw the press conference today at all, Michael.
I did not have time. I was pretty tied up today, but obviously I have done a little bit of light reading on the hire.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, there's not a lot we really do. I mean, like obviously Texas A&M and Ole Miss are going to know so much more about this guy than we are, but at the same time, it's just, optics wise, getting a guy from I mean, just you don't have to know anything about the guy, but just from an optics standpoint, you
Mm,
just got a guy that managed 2 SEC programs, and now he's coming to Ohio State.
right.
It's always been on Ohio State to bring the best from the SEC here, and we've done that. I
Yeah.
believe the guy is a good AD. I personally do.
So let me ask you this. What do you say to the argument that, well, he's never really made a good coaching hire or a good major coaching hire? Because that is a criticism of his out there, that he didn't make a good hire after Houston Nutt left. And then he didn't make a good hire with the basketball coach as well. And when he was responsible for replacing a basketball coach. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because I don't know. I mean, my thoughts are positive on the hire because I think it's a bold new direction. I'm just drilling down on like some of the negative sides of the coin. Like, I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, he's gonna every any athletic director is gonna have criticism, but from what I understand, his criticisms. I mean, with the Jimbo Fisher deal, like I said before, he did extend him, but he did fire him. But the basketball hires, I really can't speak on that. All I can really say is this guy has run 2 SEC athletic departments before coming to Ohio State, so I have no doubt that he's learned from the mistakes he has made. So he's been like, was it iron sharpens iron? He's been sharpening iron in the SEC, learning on the job. And now he's bringing all of that knowledge and aggressiveness to Ohio State. But he's also learned on how to, move forward and, learn from his mistakes. So that's really all I can say to address that.
Now he did almost make a move to hire Bob Stoops before he left Texas A&M. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. In fact, that was his pick. Or at least that's what's being reported in the media, is that he had selected Bob Stoops, and that Bob Stoops was confident enough in it that he was telling people that he was going to be heading to College Station. And then some of the major power brokers at Texas A&M undercut him and basically pulled a power play because they didn't want Stoops and the deal fell apart. So that's interesting to me because I have both of us have said before that we think that Bob Stoops is an interesting coaching candidate. I think he is a coach that deserves. Maybe Ohio State's too much of a step, and so maybe that's too bit. Maybe we're being too optimistic with that. But I do think he deserves that next step up to see what he can do with more resources and more access to talent. And so based on my relatively high opinion of Mike Stoops, I think that would have probably been a good hire for Texas A&M. I think that their board members probably made a mistake on that.
Now, do you say Mike Stoops or Bob Stoops? They were going to hire Bob Stoops or Mike Stoops?
Did I say Bob Stoops?
You said Bob Stoops.
Okay. Then disregard all of that and replace it with Mike Stoops.
It's Mark Stoops at Kentucky.
Yeah, Mark Stoops.
Mark
sorry.
Stoops
Yeah.
at Kentucky. I was like, huh? Bob Stoops? Really?
There's three Stoops brothers.
Yeah. Okay, I do know that then. Okay, I was completely shocked by the Bob Stoops thing. I was like, wait, what?
Why didn't you stop me like 3 minutes ago and be like,
because Stoops? I thought that you actually did mean Bob Stoops.
Oh, okay. Well,
but then you said Mike and Mark Stoops. I was like, wait, what? Okay, I think he got it wrong.
Yeah, no, Mark, the one at Kentucky.
The one at Kentucky, which would have been a good hire. I think it would have been better than Elko.
Yeah, I do too.
So, how is Ross Bjork going to manage Ohio State? So I thought about this some, and I tried to research him a little bit. I do know that he understands football is king. And apparently when he was at A&M, he was great at fundraising money. Let's be real. He was at the vanguard when it comes to NIL and paying players at Texas A&M, because we all remember that greatest of all time recruiting class in 2022, only to be trumped by 2023 Alabama. I expect him to bring that same mentality to Ohio State. And now, is Ohio State going to be as aggressive in NIL as Texas A&M? I do not expect that. But are they going to improve immensely? I do expect that. I do not expect NIL to any longer be a weakness for Ohio State. I expect Ohio State to be a leader when it comes to NIL and compensating players. But at the same time, it makes me wonder, is he going to be so aggressive that some of these sports at Ohio State that make no money and nobody pays attention to, are they going to get rid of them?
I don't know. If you could make some serious budget cuts and reallocate significant money towards football, I would be for that. I think that all of these sports are a little bit ridiculous at this point, considering that we're fielding almost a dozen more sports in some cases than schools in the SEC. We're just fielding a whole lot more sports, and that's coming out of the football budget, and the football budget makes all of the money. So how fair is it not to allow football to have total preeminence, since it is the driving force for the entire university? How fair is it to not give it 100% chance, the way that they do the schools in the SEC, that football will succeed above all else? If other things have to suffer at the expense of football, then that's what we're going to do. That's the mentality in the SEC, and that's why they don't have all of the additional sports that many of the Big Ten teams carry.
And Michael, you know better than anyone else, considering you were in the SEC for a while in college and everything. You know how they think and operate down there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, along those lines, and I guess I was saying before it was a red flag, but, based on what you said, I'm thinking maybe it's actually okay. But the only red flag I really have in this is not really a Ross Bjork thing. This is more of a college sports thing. And where things are going is the talk of revenue sharing for the players. Good God, this is getting out of hand. Don't the players have enough money between a full scholarship and NIL? This is fucking ridiculous. What do you fucking need to survive in college that you need revenue sharing on top of NIL and stuff? But then what you just said, I'm like, well, shoot, if they're going to do revenue sharing, I'd rather the money go to the players and bring in the most elite players than go to the women's fucking field hockey team that nobody gives a fuck about.
Right.
It's like, what are we doing here? So, I mean, like, they both are kind of like a catch-22 in that regard. I don't know, man.
So, I mean, if there's going to be revenue sharing, I think there has to be structures in place because, if there's going to be revenue sharing, now we're talking about a totally different model. We're talking about money that would essentially be coming directly from the university to the athletes and some type of potentially collective bargaining agreement or something. And in that case, there has to be things put in place to where, maybe these NIL collectives are done away with under that structure, that they are outlawed, that, that if you're going to partake in the collective profits of the sport, of the revenues and all of that, we're not going to like create this fake phony entity over here on the side and send you to the mall, every other Saturday to wave to people and sign a few autographs and claim that you're getting paid for your name, image, and likeness. It's all a sham. The NIL collectives, the way they're set up, it's a way to game the system. And the new president at A&M actually was right there at the forefront, meaning he was on the cutting edge of gaming the system. So as long as that's the system, I'm all for gaming it as much as you can. All I'm saying is, if it moves to a revenue sharing type of model, I think there needs to be some corrections made somewhere, or it just becomes, it just becomes kind of a free for all.
Do the players have to become employees of the university?
Well, I mean, I don't know the legal ramifications of that, so I'm not going to speak to it, but
right,
that would be moving much closer to that. Yes. Maybe or maybe not. It might technically not be. Yeah. But
and
it would be
then,
much
I mean,
closer.
I think they would get I don't know how that would work. I think they would get a scholarship discount, but I don't believe they would get a full on scholarship anymore. They might have to pay their own way. I don't really know, but I mean, the first thing I'm doing with Ross Bjork, first thing he needs to do is fire Chris Holtman's bitch ass, the basketball
What's the
coach.
buyout down to now? Do you know?
Man, I think it's between like 12 and 15 million, but Ohio State can come up with that money. What were you saying earlier, Michael? You were saying that there's no reason in the world that Ohio State can't be top 15 in basketball.
Right. Yeah. It's not too much to ask that, like most years, we'll say 7 out of 10. Ohio State is a top 10 to 15 type basketball team, which to me means they probably have a top 10-ish type coach most of the time, which shouldn't be a problem to find, secure, and pay. But that just doesn't seem to be the case.
No, and I mean, everyone, I'm going to do a deep dive in Ohio State basketball here in probably a month or so, right before the tournament, and just talk about the state of the program. But um, it's January and they're in free fall. Chris Holtman sucks. I mean, um, not a lot of positivity there. They're not coached well. They don't run an offense. They don't really play any defense. They have talent. They absolutely have talent. But they lack sense. They lack a total sense of any kind of direction under him. It's beyond time to get rid of him. But I've said for the longest time, and I'm beyond Chris Holtman now. I would say the biggest problem with Ohio State basketball, Michael, is Gene Smith.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
He
So,
is the cancer, and he's like the Emperor Palpatine behind the scenes of all of this, doing all of the evil treachery.
before
Go ahead.
before we transition to Gene, let me kind of juxtapose Gene versus Bjork. Gene has had this very grandfatherly, supportive type relationship with Ryan Day, where he sits down with him and kind of like, pats him on the back and caresses his neck, after he loses to Michigan. Obviously, I'm being a little bit facetious with that, but he does just kind of sit there with him, like in a grandfatherly type role. I would be interested to know how that dynamic's going to change with Bjork and what Ryan Day is thinking about this change. Ryan Day has to know that this changes his situation.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Chris Holtmann was there too. Ryan Day and Chris Holtmann were both at the press conference today.
Okay.
I know Ryan Day is definitely he is on the hot seat. Chris Holtmann is gone. Chris Holtmann should be fired right now. And Ross Bjork should be assigned to find the head coach in the offseason who he wants to take over. Holtmann should be fired right now. And then, deal with all the ramifications of roster turnover, this, that, and the other. Ohio State's not making the NCAA tournament.
I guarantee you there's some type of now this is my guess. That might be taking place to some degree, but I would guess that there's some future date not too far out there that Ohio State probably gets another 7-figure deduction off of that buyout. So I would say as long as Gene's there, they're probably going to be waiting for that date, whenever that is.
This is not the time to be cheap for Ohio State and saving money. You make money by spending money, and spend the money, get the Holtmann, get him the fuck out of here. Put your resources into finding. Again, Ross Bjork doesn't even become like an assistant to Gene until March. So he's really hands off with the program until then. And then he's really just observing Gene. Gene's making all the calls, but Gene Smith should fire Holtmann now. And then Ross Bjork in July can go and find the correct head coach, whoever that may be. There are a lot of selections out there. There are some really good elite coaches.
Yeah. I'm going to turn this light on, Jay. Somehow I forgot one of my lights.
Oh, okay. Technical issues, everyone.
Yeah.
Got it?
Got it. So,
all right.
Okay. So, yeah, definitely changes for Ryan Day. Gene is on the way out. And Gene, I don't think leaves really a powerful legacy behind. Leaves a very kind of so-so legacy behind. And maybe that's all right. Maybe that's being generous. Maybe that's giving the benefit of the doubt. There were some positives in, but at best, he left a so-so legacy behind.
Good riddance to that stupid motherfucker, man. I hate Gene Smith. I cannot say enough how much I can't stand that guy. Too bad he can't be fired right now and Ross Bjork take over immediately. Just a garbage athletic director, man. And an athletic director that has slowly destroyed Ohio State from the inside out under his watch, especially in the last 6 years.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
He has there's nothing really that has improved under Gene Smith that I can think of. Now, the football team has stayed good. It's, it hasn't taken a hit. It's stayed at a high level. You could even argue during Gene's time, it's been at the highest level ever. And you certainly can make that argument. However, I think that is a function of things that are external to Gene. I think that's a function of he inherited Tressel as a coach. After Tressel had his issue with Tatgate, I think the Board of Trustees already had Urban Meyer hand selected. And so you plug in one of the top 3 coaches of the last 30, 40 years, and then Urban gets that up and running and hands it off to Ryan Day to basically kind of be the offensive coordinator, the quasi offensive coordinator head coach in Urban Meyer's structure. And it's been very successful, but I don't think that that's really a major testament to Gene. I think that that's just a testament to the Board of Trustees, and the Ohio State program as a whole.
Yeah. Well, he did hire Chris Holtman. That was all him.
Well, yeah, that would be the negative side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The baseball program.
He
The
hired
baseball
Ryan
program.
Day. Ultimately he hired
Pretty
Ryan
much,
Day.
yeah. The baseball program, Michael, has become a total disgrace and complete and utter failure.
Yeah.
They are so bad that they look at making the Big Ten tournament in baseball as a success, when Ohio State baseball should be of the mindset of we should be making super regionals every 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
not competing in the Big Ten. What in the fucking hell has happened to that program? I have no idea, but it's all under Gene Smith's watch. They had
Well,
that baseball coach years ago, and he didn't fire him. And I know you're trying to say the football program has been good. Yeah, but they have underachieved under his watch.
yeah, I'm just saying you can't deny that the football program has been extremely successful, under his watch. There is one national championship. Again, I don't accredit a whole lot of that to him. Baseball is a function of, are you going to spend money? If you're going to win in baseball in the Big Ten, you have to fund it properly. Michigan decided to fund their baseball team properly. Indiana has gone in and has done a nice job with their baseball program. Nebraska does a good job with their baseball program. And these schools are willing to make the commitment to spend the extra money and to play the early part of the season in the South. And it's a big commitment, and it's a big tax on the college baseball players. I know I played 4 years of it, and the travel gets extremely intense. It's not, 5 or 6 road games like college football. It's, 25 road games, on buses and in hotels. And you've got to spend the money to get out of the Big Ten footprint in the early part of the season, because, you can't play baseball in Columbus very well in February.
The best players in Ohio should not be leaving Ohio to go to the SEC either. They should be staying home.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, that's a big part of the reason is not playing in that horrendous February, March weather. Cause the college baseball season starts so early. And I know Indiana, at least some years ago, they were spending as much time possible the first 2 months of the year taking trips and playing games in, Florida and Texas and Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Big Ten baseball sucks, and I always pay very close attention to the NCAA tournament, and I cheer for all of the Big Ten teams. But since Michigan, 5 years ago, the Big Ten or whatever it was, when they choked in the national championship game, like the Big Ten's been completely irrelevant. You kind of hinted at it, but Gene Smith has been awful in the biggest moments. The Tressel situation. The hiring of Urban Meyer. I remember that press conference when he introduced Urban Meyer. He didn't even look like he wanted to be there. The man looked like he was like either high on drugs or something. I don't know. But he was like he couldn't get his sentences out correctly. I remember the fan base was like, "Why isn't this guy fired right now?" Because he botched that completely.
Yeah,
And the Zach Smith situation.
Yeah. Well, going back to the hiring of Urban, there's a lot of kind of smoke around the idea that, Urban, that was a done deal. That Gene really had very little, if nothing,
The
to
board of
do.
trustees are the ones that hired Urban. It wasn't Gene Smith. It was the board of trustees.
Exactly. Yep. And so, I believe that I've heard that from enough sources that I believe that probably is the case. And so, so I'm glad for a new era. I think that this guy's going to be certainly much more aggressive. I think that we have the opportunity to be more on the cutting edge. I hope he can rein in some of those issues, Jay, because he has had violations at both Ole Miss and Texas A&M. So I hope that we can merge Ohio State's uptight compliance department with this guy that clearly some of these little small rules are not something that's a big deal to him, and in all honesty, the NCAA, a lot of their rules are idiotic. So to a rational person, it would just be difficult to abide by some of these, stupid rules. And so I get that, but I hope that we can merge the two together, loosen up Ohio State's AD, compliance department, and let this new AD come in and have some more freedom. And then hopefully he's learned from some of these previous stops, where to push it and where not to push it, so that we don't have any kind of, violations or issues in his time in Ohio State.
He's the boss over the compliance guy, right? Doug Archie. I believe he's like he would be Doug Archie's boss.
Yeah, they are. But in those kind of, bureaucrat type positions like Doug Archie's in, they accumulate so much power that it becomes difficult, for the AD to fully deal with all of that, because, Archie's been there so many years. So
I'll tell you what, if Ross Bjork wants to get this thing going and really transcend Ohio State into the 21st century with aggressive policies, then he needs to go to President Carter and be like, "Hey, this motherfucker needs fired, and he's preventing me from doing my job correctly."
Yeah.
So that's what needs to happen. He needs to be fired. They need to get somebody in there from the SEC as well and figure out not how to work with the NCAA, but how to go around them.
Yep.
And find the loopholes.
Yep. I agree. I agree with that. It's, when you're dealing with the NCAA and you're dealing with laws and rules and loopholes and lawyers, there's all of this stuff that can be a little bit ambiguous. And it's almost like going to a local courthouse or a local, justice of the peace or municipality or something and trying to get something done. You go in and you talk to this department and you say, this is what I want to do. And they look right at you and they tell you, you can't do that. You can't do that. You go to the next department, you tell them the same thing. They look right at you. They say, you can't do that. You finally go to the right department, the one that actually knows the rules, and has a proper understanding of the rules. And you tell them what you want to do. And they're like, oh yeah, that's no problem. And I'm like, well, why didn't the other people that I went to, why did they say I couldn't do it? They said, well, they just don't understand the rules. And so I think that Bjork is a guy that he wants to understand the rules and he wants to understand how you can push those rules to their limits. And so he's shown that, he's proved that. And although I am not, Jay, going to go as far as you and go slam dunk, I'm very optimistic and I like the new direction that it seems like Ohio State is taking with this hire.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete 180 from where they were. They couldn't have been any worse with Gene Smith, and I believe they can't be any better with Ross Bjork. And Michael, I'm going to take this another direction here. I'm not usually one to bring politics into sports. Politics and sports don't mix. But if you're going to bring, if one side's going to bring politics into sports, you best believe I'm going to bring politics into sports, Michael. And I've said this before. If people listen to 97.1 The Fan in Columbus, Ohio, Gene Smith is on there on the commercials preaching equity and equality. And then is all embraced, because I think, in that one interview he had with Doug Lamarice about some wrestler coming out as gay. So he's all embracing of the LGBTQ culture. Well, honestly, I think he's somebody that should be preaching with his fellow New World Order socialists at the World Economic Forum currently going on in Davos, Switzerland. So, Gene, you can take your fucking left-wing socialist politics and get the fuck out. We're not a bunch of fucking sheep here. We know what you're doing on those commercials, preaching that stupid left-wing agenda, and I'm not here for it. I'm sick and fucking tired of your shit, because all you're doing when you're preaching equity, that means you're taking away from the money-making sports and giving it to the sports that nobody freaking cares about, which is crippling the sports at the top. That's what equity is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not equity to take from those that have and give to those that have not. That actually is equity. That's not equality.
Yeah.
Equality is that, every person earns their spot. And I get it that some of these sports would never be able to earn their spot and that football is going to fund a bunch of it. But the key question is not how many of these sports can football fund. The key question is is football being given its max potential? And as long as that answer is yes, then if that means funding 29 other sports or 32 other sports or 36 other sports or whatever that number is, that's great. As long as football is reaching its max potential. And under Gene, I never felt like he pushed for that extra 5%, for that extra, little bit, for that extra push.
No, Gene Smith's too passive. This guy I don't think is. Side note, with the transfer portal and everything and Saban going away, I just want to point out that I'm about 99% sure that Caleb Downs is not going to Ohio State. And it's not for the reasons that everyone thinks.
So you, how do you know this? Or why do you think?
I know
do you have
this
some kind of inside track on this, or you just?
I do have some inside information because I spent a lot of time in the Mill Creek School District. My in-laws used to live there. Spent a lot of time in Beaufort, Georgia. Got married there, so I know. I'm pretty familiar with the community. Caleb Downs' family does not like the cold. Caleb Downs was never going to Ohio State the first time around, even though people tried to make it seem like he was super interested in Ohio State, and I have no doubt that he does love Ohio State. But Alabama wasn't even his last visit in the summertime, and they won out over Ohio State, who did have the final visit. And I have no doubt that we know that how Ryan Day has many faults, but recruiting's not one of them. The guy is an elite recruiter. He had the final visit and still didn't get Caleb Downs. Why is that? Well, he doesn't want to play in the cold. His brother didn't want to play in the cold either. Josh Downs. I mean, he went to North Carolina, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
Would they like to play in the NFL one day?
Well, like the Colts play indoors.
Well, it's going to get you eventually.
It is, but I mean, for right now, they're going to enjoy themselves and enjoy the nice weather. So I don't expect Caleb Downs to come here unless like something crazy happens. He's not going to Ohio State. He's going to go to Georgia, which sucks because now Georgia is going to be loaded beyond belief.
I would use the opposite logic. I think the college football season is nicer in the Big Ten than it is in the SEC. It's so hot for so long in so many parts of the Southeastern Conference where those schools are located. And by October, you're getting some really nice Saturdays in the Big Ten. Now, when it gets really cold in Big Ten country, generally you're not playing football outside anymore. So I don't know. I guess if that's how somebody feels that, you can't overcome that, that's how they feel. But to me, I think it's silly.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, they live in like Mill Creek area, Georgia. I don't know where the Downs family lives. I know people that know them real well, though, and they said he was never going to Ohio State, and I believed him. So there's that. One more final thing, Michael. Did you ever play the EA Sports NCAA football game?
Of course.
That's my favorite game of all time, man. There were rumors that July 12th, I believe, was going to be the official release date, 2024 for its return 10 years later.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either. But I think that date was, I think somebody released it too hastily. That's not the date. So it makes me raise a little bit of red flags. Like, okay, we're in January here. Why do we not have a release date? Why don't we have a trailer for the game? What's going on? Let's not play this game again like we did last year. The game needs to come out, man. The game is past due. It is the greatest game of all time. Did you play the last one that came out with I believe Denard Robinson was on the cover?
Yeah, I did. But was that the last one?
That was the last one.
What year was that? 14? 13?
Yeah, NCAA 14, yeah.
14. And Denard Robinson.
This one is going to be called NCAA 25 because it's always like, it takes the year ahead. Yeah. I guess it's 11 years later. This is going to be 11 years later. I thought it was 10. 11
years
later.
I'm ready for it. Better be a great dynasty mode. I want to see some cool recruiting. I want to update that recruiting. I mean, recruiting's gotten even so much more sophisticated since the 2014 edition of that game. So hopefully there's some good recruiting. Hopefully you can still create your players and put them in your own put them in your own pipeline state. I'd create some monsters out of the state of Ohio and then dump them in, and you hit on those guys like 90% of the time usually. Yeah, I'm ready for that game. I don't know you got any insight on what's taking so long?
None at all.
Mm.
None at all. I just hope they're not getting caught up in like red tape with
Yeah.
paying players and all of that, because I can assure you that 99% of players want to play in that. They want to play the game. By the way, did you real? I don't know if I ever told you this. Do you realize I got like a couple $1,000s for the like when that settlement happened back in the day when the game ended?
Really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I got like like they sent me some kind of email because I was on Youngstown State's roster
Mm.
during the time it was out, and I was like, well, shoot. I mean, I don't believe in this one bit, but if anybody's gonna get paid, I'm gonna make sure I get fucking paid.
Yeah.
There are like teammates of mine that like played so much more than I did, and all of this stuff, and here I am. I was like only on the team for a couple years, and I got like a couple $1,000 paycheck. I was like, fuck yeah, I'll take that.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yes.
man.
So, yes, I don't know I don't know what the delay is. I had almost kind of been under the impression that, that it might not happen, like that it
I
might get,
know. In the back
yeah,
of my mind, I'm like really, really, really concerned, but I think it's gonna happen.
yeah. Yeah, I do too.
And when it does happen, everyone, I might share my gamer tag on here because I'm not kidding around. I was a god at that video game. I did beat the number one player in the country, like, on different different years, like 3 or 4 different times. They would
Well,
always glitch the game. They weren't actually really good at
we're
the
gonna
game.
have
They
to
would glitch
have
the game.
we're gonna have to, like, unless you show it, it didn't happen. We're gonna have like a live playoff where you play these great players around the country and see if you've still got it in your
I
old
used to
age.
run it. I used to play it on like Twitch, and I used to play Madden on Twitch and stuff and stream it and stuff, but
Well, we'll have to see if you still got it.
it's gonna be a completely different game, man. This like it's
You
gonna
figure
be
it
on
out. You have to
Series X.
master it.
What?
You have to figure it out. You have to master it.
I know, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try, man. But like Jay from like 12 years ago and Jay Family Man are completely different people.
Right.
It's like, yeah.
Little different time structure.
Yeah, a little different time. It's like I
Yeah.
need like the time stone or something, like Doctor Strange,
Right.
like reset time or freeze time, so I can like spend
Right.
all day like practicing the game and figuring it out. But like
And then get back to
my
your regular
age
life.
doesn't like, huh?
And then get back to your regular
And
life.
then get back to my regular life. Yeah,
That
so I
would be
don't get
great.
tired and stuff.
If you could freeze time and waste time while time's frozen, like that's when you wasted all your time when you froze time.
Yeah.
That would be
Kind of
great.
like in Dragon Ball Z, the hyperbolic time chamber. Michael,
Yeah.
you don't know a damn thing about that.
No, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, but like
Speaking of
Goku and
time,
before they went to fight Cell, they had to like freeze time and spend more time to get stronger before they fought Cell. It was great stuff.
speaking of time, I think we're reaching the time
We
on
are.
this podcast. Do you have anything else to add to this, Mr. Rage?
I do not have anything else to add. I just think it's a grand slam hire by Ohio State. Looking forward to it. Gene Smith can get the fuck out. Ready for him to be gone. And I'm ready for the NCAA video game to come back. So there.
There we go. All right. You've heard it. We'll be back with more content, all kinds of stuff to talk about. Just trying to find the time to get it all in. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and we'll be back again very soon. Take it easy.